Welcome to Assets and Algorithm, the show where we explore the intersection of real estate and technology. Today, I have Jesse here with me from AJX Capital and AJX Homes. Thanks for joining me today, Jesse.
Thank you, Derek, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this episode. I think you have a really impactful and tremendous story, and you're doing some really great things with your business as well. So let's start at the beginning of your career in real estate. How'd you get started, and how did you end up running these two great companies at AJAX?
Okay. So pretty much graduated from high school, and my goal was to be a doctor. I actually did get admitted to UCSD for my college and was studying pre-med, undergraduate, and then got a side job at a laboratory while I was going to school there. And it was for a perinatal research laboratory and worked there, as I was going to school and kind of worked my way up. And what was happening is on the side, my sister was graduating from San Diego State to become a teacher, and I remember her coming home one day, telling and saying, "Hey, I'm going to move out. I'm going to graduate here soon. Move out of our parents' house." And she's like, "I'm going to go rent an apartment." And I remember her saying, "Well, you should buy, don't rent." Because I remember I always hear that, didn't really know what it meant, just sounded right? And I remember she's like, "Oh, the credit cards I racked up and everything. I don't know, if I'd even be able to buy a house or anything." I was like, well, what if I check? And so I kind of took it on like a little project of my own, learned how to fix credit, kind of worked on her credit. We got it to where she had her score was high enough. And now with her new job, she had the income, and I worked with the lender, kind of showed me the ropes of how that works. We got her approved. Then we got her a 3-bedroom condo down the street from my parents' house where she was renting out 2 of the rooms to community college there, and literally almost paying like 100, $200 a month, so I remember when we closed, I was more excited than her, I think, even though it was her property. And it just became like a hobby, right? And so here I am still going to school. She ended up, I said, "Hey, what if we buy another one?" And she said, "Well, you can figure it out. Go ahead." So like every couple months I was buying her a property. And so it became like a rental portfolio. Long story short, I got to the point like, oh, I can't be your property manager anymore. You need to go get a property manager or sell them. She kind of looked at me and she was like, "Well, I'll sell them." And so we started selling. I put her with an agent. And then I started seeing how much money she was making because the markets had gone up. And I was like, wow, that's a business right there. Little did I know, I mean, it's kind of what flipping is, right? That was kind of flipping in disguise for me. And so I, started doing it little by little. And then I decided to do one, and I did a little condo here in South San Diego. It was like 40 grand back in the day. It was one of the last HUD foreclosures. And I bought it. I remember being there at night, painting, shocking myself, changing the plugs, different things, reading a history book while I'm there. And I remember when I finally flipped it, I made 5 grand. For me, a starving student, I was like, the world to me was amazing. It was great, and it just, since then, it just never stopped. It was like a rush. So I started doing a flip here and there on my own. As I was working in the laboratory, I was working with these doctors, the guys I would look up to, guys that I wanted to be like. And little by little became friends, and we talk, and then they would say, "Man, Jesse, I'd rather do what you're doing." And it would be shocking, right? Here I am, I'm trying to be like them, and they're saying they'd rather do what I'm doing in real estate. And it was just, I couldn't believe it. And then in different occasions, these different doctors told me it's just not what it used to be, right? You have to deal with bureaucracies. You have to deal with these insurances. Yes, you're doing good, and it feels great when you're helping people and their health. But he says when you can't do it the way you want to, it's not the same. So it really resonated with me, and I made the decision to leave UCSD. It was like in 2006, and I went all into real estate. And then of course the market crashed, right? And I got caught with too many high-end homes, and just it was a horrible learning lesson of being prepared, being ready for if the market turns, of what to be doing. And so then that kind of started off my journey, and I made the decision either go back to school or keep flipping. And I made the decision, hey, let's just, I told my wife, what do you think? And she said, do what you love. And I went back to real estate, and it was hard. Finally got one property in 2009, made around 60,000. And with that 60,000, I went in 2010, and I turned that into 20 flips. And so I used that, and just kind of since then, just been growing and growing ever since then.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's really amazing. I think a lot of us can relate to getting bit by that bug of real estate and really
Yeah.
finding that passion and falling in love with the industry. And you've been in the industry for a long time. You talked a lot about that pre-market crash and a little bit about that post-market crash. A very interesting part of your story is you've built a net worth of $15 million just 5 years out of a very unfortunate situation. That's very rare air. I'd love to hear about what that mind shift was that truly flipped the switch for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go into the story a little bit. I mean, you guys heard the story, right? I go down, in 2008 when the market crash kind of came back and then started doing great. Well, in 2012, got a knock on my door, and it was a sheriff that said, "Jesse, you got to come with us." And I was like, "What's going on?" They said, "I couldn't tell you. It's a sealed indictment." Well, here they are taking me to jail, me not knowing what's going on. Well, when I finally found out is that 4 years before, two of the houses in 2008, that a lender had come to me and said, "Hey, Jesse, I saw you have those two properties. I got some clients. I'm gonna do the property management. They want to rent them out. Can you help us rent these?" And so that when by the time we close, we're ready to go and we're cash flowing from day one. I said, "Sure." I was ecstatic. I was like, "Great, you have buyers for us, even better." We didn't really make money on that property. We were just trying to move forward. So here we go. What I find out later is that those two properties that I rented for them, put everything in their name, everything was going to them. But when what these guys were doing, they were what they call equity skimming. They had a pretty much a big fraud, campaign going in not only San Diego County, but in a couple other counties in California. And what they were doing, they were buying these properties with stolen identities. And so some of them didn't even exist. So they'd buy them, rent them out, keep the rents, and let them foreclose. So what happened there, the reason I got involved was because they came to me because they wanted to go knock on the doors of those houses. And, when the police are there asking them, "Well, who rented these properties to you?" They said, "Jesse Trujillo." So that's how I got involved, right? Without them thinking I'm involved with what they were doing, but I wasn't. So what ended up happening was I called an attorney friend. I told my wife, "Hey, call. It's someone I went to grade school with, was doing very well for himself here in San Diego as an attorney." And sadly, he jumped in and he came in and he said, "Jesse," I told him the whole story. "Don't worry about it. I'll prove your innocence. I got you. You just keep working." So I did, even though, in the background, it wasn't easy to deal with. And knowing that was in the background, it was one of the most worst experiences that I've had to deal with until then. And then a year later, he's called me on Thanksgiving Day to go to his office. And so I ended up going and he had said, "What's going on?" He said, "Hey man, there's some trouble." I said, "What's going on?" Well, I had bought those properties with some of my cousins, some family members of mine, like my brothers, and they said they want to bring him into the situation. And I was like, "Why would they want to do that?" And he says, "I don't know, but don't worry. If you sign this, I can make sure they don't touch them, and I can still prove your innocence." So I said, "Okay, where do I sign?" And so sure enough, he had me believing that. A couple months later, we're going down to the arraignment, and here we are thinking, I didn't bring my kids, but I brought some family, some friends, my sisters, people that were just happy that is going to be behind us, thinking about where we're going to go to lunch or dinner that night after that. And we're in there, and then the judge is kind of looking at me, looking down at some paperwork, looking at me, and he goes, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I looked at my attorney, and my attorney nodded his head at me, and I looked back at him, and I said, "Yes, Your Honor." And he kind of shrugged his head, and he just goes, "Bailiff, take him away for 5 years." And it was in that moment that I realized I just got duped. I didn't prepare my business at all. I didn't say bye to my kids. I didn't even chance to say goodbye to my mom or dad. My mom didn't even know because there was no point on bringing her in because we just thought it was all going to, be settled and taken care of and shown that my innocence there, I wasn't involved. So here I am going away. Pretty much everyone in the courtroom is in shock. My attorney was crying there and putting on a show. And I say a show because we found out months later, as is happening, that he ended up on the news. He was money laundering millions and millions of dollars for some very bad people. And he was doing that all during the time that he was supposed to be working on my case. What I ended up finding out is that he never turned any evidence to show my innocence. He never did any of that. The paperwork that he made me sign for a plea was just him trying to get me to move away because he was charging me a lot of money to I didn't know the best. I thought he had my best interest. So sure enough, here we are finding this out. I'm in prison. I'm in there and finding out, my mother had Lou Gehrig's disease, and it was taking her fast. I didn't get to be there for her. I ended up working my way to a fire camp. I know, I got the body of a firefighter over here with my burritos that I eat all the time. But I did. I worked out and I got there and I was able to see my mom 3 more times. Sadly, she was already, not speaking, eating through a feeding tube, and it hurts me to know that she saw me. The last time she saw me in an orange jumpsuit. She was my cheerleader in life and did everything she did, for me. I was really beat up, I was really like known, like, just like it was hard to keep moving forward. And I told myself I need to focus. So I asked my wife to send me paperwork from the court case. As I was going through it, thousand papers, I found a document that no one had ever showed me, including my attorney, of how they even came up with the amount that made the case, a prison case. Well, I ended up finding out when I read it that it was a clerical error. It was close to almost $1 million that supposedly the lenders had lost, but no one had even bothered to check that they had resold these properties. And it was almost like 1,000 loss that they had altogether that could have been paid in day one. So if you want to say another thing that I was so mad at and just, couldn't believe it. We tried to fight it. The attorneys would say, by the time you fight this, you're going to be out. Doesn't even make sense. There's a lot of money you're going to be losing. And by then I was already losing money left and right because of the company. And
Mm.
so, I just time passed. Luckily, I only did 2 years. I came out in 2016, and I came out angry. I came out angry at everything and everyone that had, put me in this positions. I was mad that I lost my mom. I was mad that these lender guys are taking advantage of me. Mad at my attorney friend that, took advantage of me as well. And I just told myself, like, no, I'm not going to let anything stop me. And I tell people, determination doesn't ask for permission. And I didn't ask for permission to take us back on top. It was going to be harder than heck, especially now with the record and everything I had to deal with and being broke again. Right. And, I came out and I found this saying. It was from Frank Sinatra. And he had a quote, and it says, "The greatest revenge is massive success." And I loved it. And it really resonated with me. And I thought, because I know revenge isn't good for the heart and the soul. And even though I was mad at everything that was going on, what I've gone through, I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to run with. And I would tell myself that every day and really focus on that. And that's what powered me into kind of pushing myself. I came out and I gave my wife a kiss, hugged my kids, and I went straight to work. And I worked, and really focused in real estate, getting us back on top. And 5 years later, I'm looking at where we're at, and I got us from $0 in the bank to a $15 million net worth by just working really hard and not giving up.
Listen, man, that story is really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that. The strength it took to get through that is unimaginable. And that quote from Frank Sinatra is a great one. I think a ton of people can benefit from using that as their mantra to push through difficult situations. So thank you for that. I'd love to pivot a little bit to what your day-to-day looks like, right? You're still, I'm sure, pushing through with that same strength and that same passion. What are some of the tools that help you or the systems that you use to build this company where it is currently?
Yeah, no, I can tell you it's obviously grown over the years, right? And as you grow, you put more systems, more, obviously hiring, as well, building the team. We're close to 40 people on the team now. And it's been you really jumping into my CEO role, right? I mean, where you're delegating, right? And that's the reason of having employees. So you're delegating more and more and more, especially as we're growing. And so it's my day to day is a lot different than if you would have asked me in 2010, right? Completely different, where I used to do everything. I was the one man shop, right? So it's I look back now, and now it's being a CEO. You're involved in everything to a certain degree, but you can't be, even if you want to, right? You can't be micromanaging. You got to trust your teams. You got to trust, hire the right people and do what everyone's doing their job. And here, like in AJX, one of the biggest things is our core values, that everyone has to follow them or be on the same page. Because if not, if one person doesn't follow what they're supposed to do, it affects other people and their job, right? And their wealth. Like, so everyone's winning. So for me, it's really just making sure that everything on the high end level stuff is worked on. I'm really focused on letting people know about what we're up to. They talk about secret identities. A lot of people didn't even know I was flipping. A lot of people didn't know that we have a fund now that people can invest in. And so for me, it's my role now is really pushing our brand and letting people know what we're up to, and letting know that we have a strong team, that we have a strong track record, and keeping it that way, right? I mean, for me, it's making sure that I'm looking at my team is doing everything that I would want them to do to make sure that our reputation stays the same across the board. As you grow, you get a bigger target on your back. You got people sometimes don't like people to succeed. And sadly, I've seen it and I felt it and stuff. But then you have those other people that really cheer you on. And for me, it's knowing that as long as we're doing everything right, that's all I care about. I don't care what anyone else says about us. I just want to make sure that we're doing things right. And that's why our investors keep coming back, because, what they say, right? Our proof is is in the data we do, right? And we pay people back. Are we doing this? How many deals have we done? Have we paid all our lenders back? We don't foreclose on stuff. It's been an amazing ride to see how you can grow with the right people.
Absolutely. I think choosing the right people and delegating those tasks and having that team around you that is really growth minded and like minded to build that track record that you have and is amazing. I know that you guys are doing a ton of education for new investors and always looking at bringing in new investors that you can provide a great return to as well. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah. I mean, for for me, like creating AJX Capital was something that I've been wanting for a while. I mean, hearing my story, trusting the wrong people is devastating, right? I mean, it could devastate you. I mean, I see so many people investing in things that later they get burnt or they didn't know what they were getting into. And so for AJX Capital, for us, it was growing it to something where we want to make sure people, whether they invest with us or not, that we're helping them understand that they got to trust and verify at the same time. They got to ask a million questions. You asking the questions that you need answered to be able to sleep at night. If the person doesn't want to answer them, that's not the right person you should be investing with. You should be expecting communication, hold them accountable of giving you updates on where your money is, again, what it's agreed upon. That's why like we have a fund and we have a portal. You can go in there at 3 o'clock in the morning if you want and check out, see what's going on. But know that you can also reach out to my team. And so for me, that was so important because there's so many people out there that don't know the options that they have. Like people have, with the shift in 2000 with COVID, a lot of people changed jobs. And a lot of people have old 401ks that are literally sitting there and not doing anything for them. Where, little did they know they can shift those over to self-directed IRA very easily and invest in real estate or invest in other things. And so for me, it's kind of a new thing. I love educating people to know there's, I've had people say thank you. I didn't even know that was existed. And I don't know, it makes me feel good to know that now they're making money on their money, right? And now they're going to show their kids how to do that. They're going to show their family how to do that. So it's a trickle effect. And for me, that was the biggest thing of helping people grow wealth on that side. How many people right now have equity in their homes because the prices have gone up so high, but they don't want to sell their house and use the money, right? Because they don't want to get rid of that 2.9% interest rate. And I get it. I'm the same way. But you do have equity in there. What people don't even realize, sometimes you can go get a line of credit, an equity line. Maybe you get it 6, 7, 8%. And if you invest in other things, but including like with AJX Capital, we have options for 15 and 20% interest returns. Well, you're making that difference. You're actually making money off of your money that's stuck in your house. And it's like people don't think that way. And people don't, and I say it because I never used to think that way. And it's like, unless someone really takes the time to explain it, most people don't even know that they can be making extra money with whatever money they've already worked hard to make. Again, everything's a risk, but it's about aligning yourself with good operators and people who have good track records and people who at least, I talk about real estate investing, even with my family. Anything you invest in is a risk. You never know. But if you go with data and you're making sure these operators are doing their due diligence on what it's like taking a calculated risk is a difference than just taking a risk, right? Did you do your homework, right? Did you double check that market? Did you double check that house? Did you really make sure that the rehab is going to be that amount? And so that, when you sell, you are making a profit. It's just, there's so many things that comes with it. I hate hearing people go through things that I went through to get where I'm at. And if I can stop, one or two people just from having to go through that, it's a win for me.
Absolutely, man. I love that. It sounds like you're changing minds consistently and helping people invest. But I think one of the greatest things that you talked about is those people being able to pass that down to their kids. So with that, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you have going on with your children, that you mentioned a few times. Can you tell us what you have going on with them in investing?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, proud dad over here. My kids would go with me, whether they liked it or not, to go walk these properties on Saturdays and Sundays. We would open houses. As we were growing the company, they got to see everything in the background, right? We'd walk at it, we'd be pointing out things that we need to fix and tell them what my ideas were. And little by little, they actually, without me knowing that they were paying attention more than I thought, Like we've gone to properties and they're pointing out stuff that I was like, wow, okay, they were paying attention. So they've gone into the real estate business with me, right? They've learned how to underwrite apartments. They've learned how to underwrite for flips. And recently they got picked up by a show by Warner Brothers with a total of 5 kids, and 2 of them are my son and my daughter. And they got picked up by Warner Brothers by a show called Kids Who Flip. And it's coming out this year. We finished filming it last it should be out this quarter, and it's amazing and it's exciting, not only because the experience that the kids got to make this show, but what I loved about their mentality is they were like, oh, do we do the show? And they're like, I go, imagine some young adults and or teenagers and or adults that watch this show and motivates them to see, gosh, if these kids can do it, so can I. And that really changed their mind frame of wanting to do the show. And I was always proud of them that they ran with it, they had fun. It's something to see that they're following my path. I tell people the power of real estate. There's active income and passive income, and I'm doing both, right? And active income for me is flips, but active income for other people could be your regular W-2 job. It's just, what are you doing to make that active income make passive income for you, right? That is the biggest aha that I wanted to teach my kids. Doesn't matter what they end up doing. They might not end up in my business, but if they want to go do something else, and if their lifelong dream is to be, a doctor, whoever they want to be, a lawyer, whatever they want to be, like that, they know the power of having passive income, of having money make money for you, because you never know what happens in life. And it's good to have that like backup thing there for you, right? Whether it's in rentals, whether it's investing in a fund, however that is. And so for me, it's exciting to see their growth going into it. They're right now working on the active income, but they know the power of passive income already. So it's exciting to see they're following that path. And to be honest, I think it's exciting to see, if they motivate other people that they might never meet, but to know that they might have seen their show and seen that, to know that these kids are willing to give it a shot. It's very exciting.
Awesome, man. That is very exciting. One of the greatest things we can do while we're here is inspire. It sounds like you're really inspiring the next generation. And I appreciate you sharing your story about your business and your family as well. I'd like to ask you a little to share a little bit about where you see the real estate industry in the future, and how technology is changing that.
Yeah. I mean, we use AI to a certain degree. Again, I feel it, I feel it's something that's coming, right? I mean, it's going to be everywhere, especially me dealing with my kids. I see how they use it already, right? Chat GPT and all these things. I mean, it's something that we're embracing it and knowing that it's there. Do we have to use it for everything? No. Will it really take over everything? My answer is no. If the way we built my business was through networking, through relationships, shaking hands, I don't think that's ever going to go away in that aspect. So, I mean, there's going to be so many things that AI can't do for us. What I think the smart thing to do with AI is learn how it can help you with time, right? Can help you speed things up. I mean, time is the one thing that we can't get more of, right? There's only so much time you get. And if AI can help us do things more efficiently and faster, then there's a win there, right? I'm always looking for that. Like, I'm always trying to find out, is there something I can do to help me get any part of our business a little bit faster? But like I said, team wise, like acquisitions and everything, there's AI really can't do that for us at all. And like I said, it's kind of that finding that blend between the two. It's exciting, right? Because trust me, if we could save time, that is money, right? It's money and time we're not going to get back. So it's a very exciting thing, however we can use it to benefit the company overall.
Absolutely, man. I love that answer. I definitely think that AI is going to change things, but you're never going to lose that human touch in real estate. Real estate is all about the people, and that's not going to change. I agree there. But it'll be interesting to see how that technology is able to enhance us. I appreciate you sharing with us today. I appreciate you providing those insights, Jesse. I'd love to take this time to allow you to let us know where they can find you if anybody wants to reach out or invest or learn from you.
Yeah. So we made our website, investajx.com. If you'd like to go there and kind of see our opportunities, what you have there. Again, if you want to chat with me and my team, you could also go to investwithjesse.com. And I'd love to set something up. If you have questions on how to invest, what you need to do, or just overall want to talk about real estate in general, I'm kind of opening that door to reach out to me and my team.
Right. Sounds great. Thank you again, Jesse. And this has been an episode of Assets and Algorithms.
Thank you.